Hello and welcome to the Illustrator Creating a Promotional Flyer tutorial. This is an introductory class, and let's go ahead and get started. So the promotional flyer we're going to be making today is going to be after a RICE event that happened a while back, and this is the information that I grabbed from the calendar. So here's the place and location, the time, the title, and it's comic book related. This is out of the visual and dramatic arts department. So we're going to make a flyer out of this. Just using that information, it's always best to do a quick sketch. Just kind of write down what you more or less plan to have in your design. So here's the title, here's the focal point, and we have the information and the location. So let's go ahead and jump into Illustrator. And we'll go to File, New. And we're going to make this for print. You can see there's lots of presets here. And we're going to use this first one, letter size. We'll do portrait orientation. And we'll keep this in CMYK color mode as we intend to print this out. Okay. So just one important thing is if you are sharing this computer with your colleagues or others in your group have used the Illustrator and you want to pop everything back into place, you can go up here to Essentials and go to Reset Essentials. And that way everything should be a little bit more predictable. Okay, so let's go ahead and the first thing I'm going to do is, as a reference, I'm just going to show you the final version, which is going to be this. This is the final that I've created here. And I'm going to import this into Illustrator as a reference, just so everybody's on the same page. So I kind of mimic the Superman type of extruded letters, and I have this kind of comic book blast and the this halftone, color halftone, to kind of give that comic book look. Okay, so in Illustrator, we're going to place that final version right in here. So to do that, go to File, Place, and we'll go to the File, and I'm going to drop that right in. Okay, so I just want to fade this back, and I want to lock it in place. So I'll select it, and for opacity right here, I'm going to bring it all the way down to, let's say, 10%. And then I'm going to lock it. You can either go up here, Object Lock, Selection, or you can do Command 2 is the shortcut. Now when I work, I won't accidentally select that. So the first thing we're going to do is create this focal point with this yellow blast. And we're going to learn quite a few little Illustrator techniques to get to that point. So the first thing we're going to do is make a flower shape out of a bunch of circles. So to get access to your circle, you'll see the rectangle here. Just click and hold and go down to the ellipse tool. Okay. So once I have my ellipse tool ready, I need to I'm going to give it a different color so I can see it a little easier. And I'm also going to take away the stroke. The stroke is the outline. Okay. So there we go. Now there's a couple ways of doing this. I'm going to work right in here, and then we'll move things in place later on. So if I click and drag, you can see it's going to make a circle. It's not going to make a perfect circle. To make a perfect circle, you can hold down Shift, and it'll constrain the proportions. Okay. One other thing is if you hold down Alt, it will scale out the circle about its center. So that might be useful as well. So I'm actually going to make this around 50 points. Okay. If you don't quite have 50, you can go up here and type in 50. Okay. That way everybody has the same circle. All right. So this is really important. Make sure you go back to the selection tool. Otherwise, you're going to make a bunch of circles. So go to the selection tool, and now I can place it. I can move it around, select it, whatever. And I'm actually going to make a bunch of copies of this. And the best way to make copies in the Adobe programs is not with Command C, Command V. We're actually just going to hold down Alt on the keyboard, and you can see my cursor has changed, and I can just drag this circle. And when I select it and drag, holding Alt, it'll make a bunch of copies. So I'm going to make 5 in this arrangement here, and I'm going to drop one right in the middle just to kind of cover up that hole. Okay, so this is my flower shape. And just to kind of see what's going on here, these are 6 individual circles. Now I can look at the actual outlines of the shapes in outline mode, and this is really useful later on. So if I go to View Outline, you can see all of those shapes there. Okay. So to get out of outline mode, you can do Command Y. And I'm going to make this one shape. So to do that, I'll go to Window, and let's go to Pathfinder. And Pathfinder is really powerful. A lot of unique shapes are created using Pathfinder. So I'm going to use this first one, Unite, and that's going to combine all of these into one shape, one continuous path. So after I click that, you can see what happens. If I go into Command Y, into outline view, you can see that's just one unique shape now. So you're probably wondering why I'm making this flower. And I want to make this yellow blast shape. So I'm actually going to add an effect to this shape to make this blast shape. So to do that, I'm going to go into Effect, Distort and Transform, Pucker and Bloat. Okay, so you will need to click Preview to see this happen. And I'm just going to go and drag this out a little bit to maybe around negative 25%. Okay, and then I'll click OK. And now I have more or less a blast shape. So just to show you what's going on here, if I go into outline mode, I haven't changed the original geometry there. This is just an effect. And to get a closer look at your shape, go into Window Appearance, and you can see what's going on here. So now I have my shape, my path, and then we have pucker and bloat. So this is non-destructive at this point. I can go back and I can make changes if I want. Okay, I can turn off the visibility of that effect. But I don't have access to all these new points, these new anchors that are being shown right now. So you have access to all of that. I'm going to have to expand the appearance. So watch carefully as I go into outline mode. It's still a flower. So what I'll do is go into Object, Expand Appearance. Okay, after I've done that, you can see in outline mode, now I have some brand new geometry here. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can get a closer look at this, and also so we can change the colors and move forward with our design. So you might be tempted to use the magnifying glass, and some people may like that, but I find the best way to zoom in and out in Illustrator is hold down Alt and use the scroll wheel. And this will save you a lot of time because you don't have to change tools. Okay, so here's our shape right now, and if I use the Direct Select tool, and this will make more sense later on, but I'll select Direct Select tool, and I actually can have access to each one of these anchors. And I have access to, if I click and hold these handles, I can change the Bezier curve. Okay, so I'm going to go back to selection mode, and I'm going to select my shape, and I'm going to make it yellow. And as you can see in the background, I have a black outline on my blast. So to do that, I'm going to select stroke right up here, and I'll add a black stroke. And before I move on, I'm going to go ahead and just move this where I intend it to be, and make it a little bit bigger. Okay. I'm holding Alt so that it gets bigger about the center, and I'm also holding Shift to constrain proportions. So there it is. I've put it in place, and one thing I did in the final version is to have different line weights on the stroke. So there's a really cool tool for that. It's called the Width tool right in here. So go ahead and select the Width tool, and it'll really help to zoom in here. Go ahead and zoom in, and what I'll do is I can change the width of this stroke here. And this will make it a little bit more interesting. Just kind of one of those principles of design to change the line weight to make the shapes more interesting. So I'm just clicking and holding on the line, and you can see when I do that, I add these little handles, and you can go back and you can change that. But I'm just making it look a little more interesting. Okay. So there we go. There's our blast. And the next step that we're going to do is we're going to add the core of the blast, which is like the white hottest part of the blast where it just looks like white circles. So just for the sake of repetition, we're going to go back to the ellipse tool. And we're going to go make sure, this is really important, make sure nothing is selected. So you'll have to select out here, so make sure nothing is selected, and we'll go to the ellipse tool. And to get ready, I just want these to be white circles. So I'll take away the stroke. I have a white fill. And I'll hold shift and make a couple of these circles. So that everybody's on the same page, let's just do 50. And as before, I'm going to go back to the selection tool, and I'm just going to hold Alt and click and drag these circles around. Okay? And it doesn't matter really how many you have, just kind of make it interesting. So there we go. This is a little unwieldy because I have a bunch of these shapes here, and it's going to be hard to move all this blast around. So I'm going to do the same thing we did before with Unite tool and make one unique shape here. So there's probably 3 different ways of selecting all of the white circles. So you could go into outline mode and just click and drag all these circles, and there you have them. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it, and this is common in lots of other programs, you can just select everything and then hold shift and select the blast to deselect it. So now I've selected all the circles. And one final way, a unique way in Illustrator, is to just select one circle with this white fill, and you can go up here to this button at the top, select similar objects, and you can actually change the setting here to fill color, and it immediately will select everything with the same fill color. So it'll select everything with white. That can definitely come in handy to use. So I've got that all selected. I'll use my pathfinder tool again to unite, and now my life is a little easier because it's one continuous shape, one continuous path, and there we have it. Okay. All right, so we have our blast. We have the core of the blast. Next step is going to be to add the NOT exclamation mark text. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead into the type tool, select the type tool, and I'm just going to click and drag out here. You can see it adds some Latin placeholder text, and I'll just type NOT exclamation mark. Okay, I'll highlight that and make it bigger. I'm going to go to 72. And I'll keep Myriad Pro, that's fine, but I'll do bold. Okay. So also, I'm going to make it red. I'll select that text and make it red. So at the moment, you can see how Illustrator shows you that this is a text object. It gives you this blue line here, and I can go back and it's just like any other text. I can just edit that. Okay, if I go into outline mode, you can see what text looks like. So that's good and fine, but actually, for instance, if I want to make changes to the actual shape of this of the letters, I'll need to expand it. So this is kind of what Illustrator has to offer. We can go to Object, Expand, and click OK. And now you can see, if I go into outline mode, these are 4 unique shapes. Okay, I can you can see what that looks like, and actually Illustrator does all of the grouping for us. So if you are someone who likes to see the details, if I go to Window and go to Layers, I can open up this disclosure arrow, and I can see everything in my document. So here's the blast shape, here's the PNG image we dropped in, this is the white circles, and then this is the NOT. You can see NOT has a disclosure arrow, which we can open up, and it shows you each individual element of that group. Okay, in Illustrator, you can actually select here in layers, and you can see how when I do click in here with the blue box, it shows me what's selected, and it'll actually select it in my document. Okay, that's one way of selecting the children of a group. But if you like to do things a little bit more on the fly, you can double click to go within the group. This is called going into, this is the isolation mode, I guess you can call it. And you can actually go in deeper in the hierarchy that way. To get out, you'll have to double click out here. And you can see now I'm at the top level of the group. So I'm just going to double click and make this a little more interesting. I can move these shapes around. And this gives you the breadcrumbs right here. You can see exactly where you are. So I have the exclamation selected, which is in group. I can also go even deeper into the hierarchy. If I double click the exclamation point, now I'm actually changing this compound path. The exclamation point is two individual shapes that are a compound path. So you can see how I can move that around individually. Okay, so just I'm going to make this a little more interesting. Kind of rotate this around a little bit. I'm just selecting out here on the corners to rotate it. And lastly, I'm going to add an outline here, a stroke. Okay, so that's right there. And I'm going to make the stroke align to the outside. So if you click these text here for stroke, you can select align stroke and click here to align it to the outside, which makes it look a little nicer. Last of all, you can see I can just I can overlap it a little bit just to make it a little bit more interesting. So there we go. There's our text. I'm going to go ahead and drag that over here. And now our blast is done. Okay, so now we're going to make these blasts, radiating blasts. And the first thing we're going to do is learn how to use the pen tool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take away the stroke, and we'll go to the pen tool. And the way the pen tool works, and the way we're going to use it, first off, if you want to make just sharp edges, you can just left click, and move your cursor over. And just to get a feel for it, make a square. Okay, when I'm done with the square, I'll go to the select tool. And that's how to make straight edges. If you want to give some curvature while you're in the pen tool, instead of simply left clicking, I'm going to change it on this click. I'm going to click and drag. So once you click and drag, that actually adds two handles and will give you a Bezier curve with handles. So I'm going to finish off this shape, and now you can see I have one of the corners is a curve. One last example. If I just click and drag continuously, not continuously, but at every point, you'll see everything becomes curved. Okay, so go back to the select tool, and we can see what that looks like. So one of the cool things about this is if I want to go back and take away the curves of these points, I can do that after the fact with a direct select tool. So I'll go into the direct select tool, and I'll select this top right corner, and you can see it has handles. I can now convert it to a corner. So if I select this button right here, I use the direct select tool, I selected that, and I can now convert it to a corner. So it looks like the first shape. Okay. Also, you can do the opposite. So you can select any of these anchors and make it smooth. So this button converts it to smooth. And then you can use those handles. Okay. So I can actually go in here with my direct select tool, and I can make these corners as well. So don't feel like you are going to be stuck because you can always change those around. All right, so I'm going to make our the first shape with the pen tool of the radiating blast. And I'm just going to make these really big arching shapes. So I'm going to click and hold with the pen tool. I'll click and hold again to have some curvature there. And I actually want this to be a corner. So I'll hold down Alt, and then if I click, it'll remove that second tangent. So then I'm going to go here. And if I hold Alt, I can also create a tangent. And then I'll click and hold. So now I have my shape. So if I hold Alt, you can see my cursor changes, and I can actually make this, delete that second tangent, the second handle there. And last of all, I'm going to select the very first point I made. So now I have a complete shape. Okay, so there it is. And I'm going to make it white. And I'm going to give it a black outline. And just like before, I'm going to use the width tool and make it a little bit more interesting. Okay. So if you're not comfortable using the pen tool, it takes a lot of time to really perfect. You can just use a rectangle for the sake of the tutorial and use the width tool and just kind of just use that. Okay, and then you can use the direct select tool if you want and just kind of give it an arch there and maybe make it a little bit taller and just use that instead. Okay, so anyway, this should be your foundation here for the blast. And I want to have these like black circles for the shrapnel that's coming out of the blast. So for the sake of repetition, we'll do some circles again. I'm going to take away the stroke and have a black fill. And I want it to be not a perfect ellipse. So I'll just make one of those, and I'll copy that out, maybe make it a little bit smaller. I'm holding Alt and I'm moving to copy that out. Okay, and then I'll just select all of these and I'll use my Unite tool. Okay, after I'm done and I like it, I'm going to move it right on top here, and I need to rotate it. So if I'm in the Select tool, I can always rotate by going to one of these corners and rotating like that, but the handle is kind of, you have to get really close to the handle. If you don't want to do that, you can always use the Rotate tool right here, or you can use the Free Transform tool. Free Transform tool I think is the best. So if you hit E, which is Free Transform, you can go all the way out here, it doesn't matter, and you can still rotate it. And you can also move it. So there's a lot of options with the Free Transform tool that's right here. Okay, I'm going to go back to the Select tool, and I have these shapes where I want them. And now I'm going to do group. So just like in other programs, you can group objects together. So I'm going to select the circles here. I'll hold down Shift, and I'll select the white blast, and then I'll just do a Command G. Command G will group it together. Okay, and also this all needs to be behind my yellow blast. So there's a couple ways of doing that. You can go to Object, Arrange, Send Backward. The shortcut is Command left bracket. Okay, so I'm just going to do Command left bracket, and you'll have to do it several times to get back there. And so there we have it. So I have my first blast, and I don't want to have to redraw all of that, so I'm just going to copy that over a couple of times. If we remember, hold down Alt, click and drag, and you can copy it over. And if we also remember the easier way to rotate, Free Transform right here. Or you can just hit E on the keyboard. And let's just rotate that around. You can actually scale it up a little bit with the Free Transform. Okay, the little difference here is with free transform, you lose access to the Alt, click and drag to copy. So I like to go back to the select tool, hold Alt to copy, and then just hit E on the keyboard to go back to my free transform tool. Okay, I'll scale that out a little bit. Go back to the select tool, hold down Alt to copy, E for free transform, rotate it around, and just place it right in there. Okay, so we're done with the freehand, I guess you could say, portion of this. And so now we'll just put in an interesting background and the approved text at the top. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to make just a really big rectangle the size of our sheet, and I'm going to use that for this background. So I'm not going to worry that it's in front of everything because I'll move it back later. And we can toy with some of these gradients here. So I'm going to make a nice interesting gradient for the background. If you open up swatches right here, or you can go to Window Swatches, you can see all of the default swatches. So there's actually some gradients right in here, the last kind of at the bottom here. So I'm going to go to this this one right here, and you can see it just puts it from left to right. So I actually want to make changes to the gradient, so I'll need to open up this gradient tool here, and I'm actually going to rip it out. So if I select gradient, the text, and just rip it out here, I can see it a little better. Okay, I'm going to change this to radial, and that's cool, but I still want more control. So this is kind of confusing because this is the gradient window, but there's also a gradient tool. So if I click here for the gradient tool, I can actually redraw the gradient. Okay, so I'm going to just click and draw it out pretty big here. And you can also click right in there and you can actually move it around. And that looks good. And last thing I'm going to do is do the color halftone. So there's my gradient. I'll go back to the select tool. And to have those nice dots, I'm going to go to Effect, and we'll do Photoshop Effect, Pixelate, Color Halftone. Go ahead and click on that. And I'm going to drive it up to around 16 pixels. I'll click OK. And you can see now we have a nice, interesting color halftone. Okay. So this is nice because if I go back to the window appearance, just like the flower at the beginning, you can see everything that's taking place here. So we have our gradient, and then we have our color halftone. You can actually go back in there, and you can make changes after the fact. So if I go, I can change the radius, click OK, and this is non-destructive. Okay, and I can also turn it off if I want, turn it back on. So if I open up my swatches, I can actually drag swatches right into this gradient here, and it will update. So I actually want to make this white, so I can grab the white, and I'll just put it here, and it will replace with white, and it'll update. And I actually want it to go to 100% opacity white. Then I'll just have blue circles. Okay. Okay, so that's that. And we'll just drop this in the background. I can go to Object, Arrange, Send Backward, but I actually want this to go to the very back. So I'll go Send to Back. Okay. So I think we're done with the reference image. I'll just go to Object, Unlock All, and I can delete that reference image. Okay, so I have my background, I have my blast, and last of all, I'll just write approved in 3D text at the top. So to do that, I can just use my type tool, and I'm actually going to make sure it's not a gradient, and I'll just click out here, and I'll type in approved, ... I'll highlight the text, make it red, and I'll just kind of put it right here. So I'm not going to convert this to a shape. I want it to be a text object, and I'll just apply this really neat effect, Illustrator Effects, 3D, Extrude and Bevel. Okay, click Preview. This can take up a lot of memory, so be careful. And I'll just make this extrude depth higher, and then I can add some perspective. So if I click here, I can add some perspective. Okay, and if you really want, you can actually play with some of the shading here. So if I click here, more options, I can change the shading of it, and I can turn down the ambient light if I want, and I can change the intensity of the highlights. Okay, you can do all kinds of things. So I'll just do something like that and click OK, and there we have it. So I'll just move that up, and I'm actually going to double click. And the cool thing about this is you can make changes whenever you like. It's non-destructive at this point. So I'm going to select all this text. I'm going to make it maybe 96, make it a little bigger, and drag it over. And if I zoom in, you should be able to see kind of what this looks like. Okay, so we're done. Obviously, after this, you would place some more of the information, but we can stop here. And you can always change the lighting, the color of the red to make it a little bit brighter. Okay, so that's it. And we could save this as a PDF. So I would just go to File, Save As, and save this as a PDF, and we could print this out. Okay, so we'll go down to Adobe PDF, and that's that. I'm going to keep this on and save PDF.